Good morning. I am Michael Nixon. Thank you for showing up to this press conference this morning. I ran as a candidate in a recent Republican congressional primary, seeking to be the Republican nominee for Georgia 2 in the upcoming general election. I ran for congressional office because I have a deep interest in the betterment for all people in Middle and Southwest Georgia, known as Congressional District 2. I am here today for the same reason. As I am not a final candidate in the upcoming June 18th Republican congressional runoff, I can and will now deliver important information and opinion about the other candidates whom voters will be deciding upon to potentially represent them in Washington. The specific purpose of this press conference today is to thank the several thousand people who voted for me and to make two very important statements. I do ask that you hold your questions till the end of both of my statements. My first statement deals with information that I did not originally seek out. Instead, it came to me 6 weeks ago as unsolicited email contact from concerned citizens from the Taylor County area. I decided not to bring this information forward during my time as an active candidate because I did not wish to be viewed as being a negative about another Republican candidate whom I was personally running against. Also, I did have belief that this information would be discovered by voters as they went about researching each of the candidates. Unfortunately, it did not. We must, however, recognize that this information will eventually come out, especially by the opposing Democratic Party, as this information is readily available to anyone who decides to look for it. Out of deep concern for the people of Georgia 2 and for our state and nation, I am compelled to make sure that voters are aware of the character of the candidates they will be voting for. My first statement is that I wish to make the voters aware that Chuck Hand and his wife Mandy Robinson Hand, Chuck's often declared running mate in this election, bring with them to this race significant criminal backgrounds and a demonstration of financial irresponsibility. Most astounding is a felony conviction and multi-year sentencing for the unlawful trafficking of opioids to people who live in Middle Georgia. I believe that there is no telling of the emotional heartache and physical harm that has been caused to people by this unlawful and immoral behavior of trafficking of opioids, which is recognized by all as having a devastating impact within our communities and upon our families. Additionally, Chuck Hand brings with him multiple convictions for criminal trespass and driving while under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and in my opinion demonstrating an uncaring and criminal disregard for the property and safety of others. As to financial irresponsibility, Chuck Hand is constantly talking about the need to control spending, yet Chuck and Mandy Hand filed for bankruptcy, apparently leaving the people who trusted them with the money holding the bag. There is no evidence that they have attempted to make restitution to creditors. It could be argued that Chuck Hand is seeking election to Congress because it would represent the biggest monthly paycheck he has ever seen. Let us also focus on Chuck Hand and Mandy's involvement, arrest, and conviction of January 6. While as we Republicans have all been sympathetic to the plight of Chuck Hand and Mandy, as told by them at multiple GOP meetings, information has now come to light by way of national media and in the reading of the Hand's respective plea agreements that there is a shocking contradiction to the characterization by Chuck Hand that he and Mandy gone so far as to state that they were invited in by the Capitol Police. Film footage, as now shown on national TV over the past few days, shows that Chuck Hand and Mandy were advancing into the Capitol during a particularly tense moment, pushing past tear gas and erected barriers. The film footage shows that Chuck Hand additionally went so far as to obtain a sharp metal object by breaking off a piece of metal fencing and placing it upon his person. I believe that law enforcement officials would certainly view this as a situation with the intention of inflicting bodily harm. As to the holding of hands during this period, film footage shows, and the government alleged, that Chuck had moved in the direction of engaging in an altercation between a police officer and another protester, and that he was held back from doing so by his wife Mandy. The public defender lawyer representing Chuck and Mandy Hand even stated to the court in a sentencing memorandum, as is evidenced in court documents, that clearly Chuck Hand and Mandy Robinson Hand admittedly were more than simply just tourists. All the information I have presented is backed up by official court records and available film footage. Out of an abundance of care in making this statement today, I did engage an investigative law firm to research these criminal convictions of Chuck Hand and Mandy Robinson Hand, and a copy of this investigative report, as well as my statement, will be delivered to each and all of them. In my interactions with Chuck Hand throughout this campaign, I have unfortunately witnessed several instances of unethical behavior that have been deeply troubling to me. From the very beginning of the race, Chuck approached me with a proposition that went against my core morals and principles. He suggested that we make a pact to exchange job offers if either of us were to win the election. The attempt to manipulate the outcome for personal gain rather than serve the best interest of the community was a clear indicator of his questionable ethical standards. Following the first debate, Chuck Hand reached out to me with a shocking proposal that further cemented my concerns about his integrity. He expressed regret for not contacting me earlier to arrange a truce where we would pre-plan and coordinate our answers to certain questions in order to deceive the voters. Such deceitful practices not only undermine the democratic process, but also betray the trust of the constituents who rely on honest and transparent communication from their candidates, as well go deeply against my own moral compass. It has become apparent to me that Chuck Hand's motivations for running for office may be driven more by self-interest and personal gain, rather than a genuine commitment to serving the needs of the district. His lack of concrete campaign issues and his focus on underhanded tactics, rather than substantive policy proposals, reflect a troubling disregard for the responsibilities of public service. I believe that elected officials should be held to the highest ethical standards and prioritize the well-being of their constituents above all else, qualities that I fear Chuck Hand sorely lacks. My second statement today is that I am fully endorsing Wayne Johnson as our next United States Congressman for District 2. I know Wayne to be a man of high integrity and a strong personal character, and I am positive that Wayne also is focused on the betterment of all people of Middle and Southwest Georgia. With his life and professional experience, Wayne will serve us well in solving the problems we are facing. I call upon everyone to vote in the June 18th runoff elections. Early voting starts June 10th. A debate between the candidates will be live streamed by PBS on June 9th and will be later broadcast by PBS. Again, please vote on June 18th. It is important. And I am now open for questions if you have them.
Mr. Nixon, I appreciate your statement and thanks for giving us copies of
Yes.
it and also of the law firm too. But help readers understand and voters, if you had this information while you were still a candidate, why didn't you speak out?
I was
more clarifying.
Yes, I was on the fence to speak out about it early on. However, while I was running, I honestly was hoping that one, Chuck Hand would be forthright and honest with the people that he was wishing to represent in the district. Several times he was asked if he had any other charges aside from January 6th, and he sidestepped every question, and he only focused on his January 6th involvement and tried to make it to look like he was peacefully protesting as much as possible, and that he and his wife were invited into the Capitol, and did not go through any things that they did. So I was hoping that integrity would come to the forefront before the elections, and sadly it did not. Any other questions?
I just kind of want to know, what was that process? Because you said you initially didn't seek out some of this information, but
Correct.
What was that process for you to go back and confirm some of these statements that you're claiming?
Absolutely. The first thing I did not want to do is actually bring anything to the forefront without having firm, concrete evidence. I had several people contact me through email and messenger about unethical behavior and concerns that they had with Chuck Hand. But I did not want to go based off just their words. And so I researched people that had dealings with campaign involvement and the legal factor, and that's when I got Cooper Barton and Cooper to dig into this. I've been working with them to get fact and hard evidence before I actually came forward, because I did not want to base anything off opinion or he said, she said. And so with their investigative reporting, they worked to obtain an investigator to actually bring forward the facts that I am giving. And that's one of my biggest things is I did not want to come just with opinion alone.
Who paid the law firm for
I
that
did.
research?
Not my campaign because I am no longer running in it, so personally out of my own expense.
And
So what would you say to critics who might say that releasing this information at this time would further damage Republicans' chances to unseat Congressman Bishop in the general?
That is a great question. I believe that if this had not come to the forefront and we allowed Sanford Bishop's team to actually bring this to revelation, this would be a black eye on the district if Chuck Hand was going to be the nominee going forward in the runoff. I would rather take care of dirty laundry inside the GOP before anything gets past the election, so that way we do our due diligence. I believe that if candidates were vetted before the primary, then this would have already came to light. I believe that the majority of the 2nd District that is learning about this through this process now will be grateful to know the truths being presented before them. And if any people knew of this unethical behavior beforehand and still sided with Chuck, then they are unethical in their own right, and I have no opinion of them at all. But the people that has been these truths have been kept from deserve to know the truth before the runoff ensues, so that way they can actually do the right thing and vote for the candidate knowing the full factors of everything. If they still decide to vote for Chuck Hand after learning these truths, this does take all ammunition away from Sanford Bishop, and it leaves him nothing to counter against the GOP nominee. And so this is twofold. It's to deliver the truths to the district, and it's also to take the wind out of Sanford Bishop's sails moving forward.
Did you present this information to Chuck Hand and give him a chance to respond to you personally?
I have not, just because in my dealings with Chuck Hand personally, he made some unethical statements to me where he wanted to more or less collude with me, which I found astonishing that he would even ask a fellow running mate to do that, even after the first debate that we had, when he called me a few hours after the debate and said that he wanted to actually, he says that he regrets not calling me a day before and gaining a truce with me, so that way we can go into the debate prepared and working together. And I stated to him that I would not do that. However, when I looked back at the debate and watched it, it appeared, and this is my opinion only, but it appeared that he and Regina Liberato probably came to those terms with, if you look at the questions that they delivered to one another, to give themselves talking points that was beneficial to each of them and not against the other candidate.
So to your knowledge, he didn't know about this news conference today, right?
To my knowledge, he did not. However, I do believe that he was aware somewhat of it since his wife was in attendance. And so his wife Mandy Hand is here, so I'm assuming that he knew about it.
Sir, how readily obtainable is this information? Is it out there so much that interested voter could have just found it by happenstance, or was it difficult to find?
It was a little difficult to find, just because if you Google anything with Chuck Hand, you have a lot of congressional stuff comes up, and you have a lot of his January 6th stuff comes up that just briefly touches on the matter. And so, it did take some time to deep dive in. And so that was one of my main concerns, that if voters just was Googling candidates, they would just see the first page of Google, and that would be mainly things that this does not touch on. And I was worried that they would not do their due diligence and actually vet the candidates to the fullest extent that they should, if they're going to be casting something that is more important than anything that we have as citizens, is our right to vote. And so that vote counts, and it should count, and it should be cast knowing the full knowledge of the truth and nothing but the truth.
And what would you say to the people who may question the legitimacy of the statements that you just made, because you waited until after the election?
Well, I waited until I no longer had any skin in the game. And so this means that I have nothing to benefit from also transpiring these revelations to the people of 2nd District. I only have the betterment of 2nd District in my mind and in my heart. If I had presented these statements beforehand, or let's say waited the day before the primary, even though at that time I was still hoping for integrity on the other party, then I would have had skin in the game. And it would have looked like I was trying to better myself and my own role in the election. However, I did not make the runoff. I do not have any skin in the game. And so this does not benefit me at all all it does is benefit the people of District 2 by learning and knowing the truth.
And sir, as Republican voters go in for the runoff to vote, what do you want them to keep in mind as they walk in to cast their vote?
Absolutely. They need to keep in mind who can defeat a 31-year incumbent. And is that going to be somebody like Chuck Ham with a lot of baggage and also a lot of things that he did not bring to light and he sidestepped, and also his unethical behavior? Or is it going to be somebody that's going to actually have a chance unseating Sanford Bishop, that has experience in D.C. and already is one step ahead of the game? And with that being said, I do hope that the people of 2nd District do go and choose Wayne Johnson, since I do believe that he is our only chance right now at defeating Sanford Bishop.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about that, sir?
I do believe that covers everything that I have.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.